Okay, here we are again. All right, everything looks good to me. My camera's tested my camera out many times today so it wouldn't shut off on me. So I think we're ready to go. Couple of things I want to talk about today, and then I will just do a normal Q&A if anyone has any questions. I don't check it in the middle or in the beginning. I check it toward the end of my initial thoughts, which for most people, initial thoughts would be like 3 to 4 minutes. For me, my initial thoughts are usually 20 to 25 minutes, and then I look at my Q&A. So this is not taped. I get that quite a bit. People ask me that. It is live. I just don't have it up. It tends to disrupt me a tad bit, especially if stuff's off topic, and not off topic on consciousness, but just off topic of consciousness in any way. You know, it's completely kind of a sideline thing, which sometimes I don't mind answering, but when I'm in the middle of something, it can kind of take me away from it. So I do encourage questions. I just don't look at them till I'm toward the end. Okay. We are now on the, I'm going to say on the other side of the 777 portal, which a lot of people ask, what's that mean? July, 7th month, day, July 7th, and the year 2023, which adds up to the number 7, which gives you the 777. Next year, one of the big portals will be the 888. Last year, one of the big portals was 666. So these portals open up weeks, months for some. People will feel months before. Everyone thinks it's that day, and if nothing happens on that day, you know what? Nothing's going to happen. What's going on? Nothing happened on 777. I did an Instagram stream on 777 yesterday, and I saw a couple posts on it, but everyone acts like it's just that day. It's weeks before that day. That day is just kind of a linear marker for kind of our human brain to latch onto, like, oh, this is a big thing. And I've said a lot on this channel that when we start talking about going through our ascension process, that we'll start to notice certain things about linear years, even though there is no linear time. We start to track things a little bit where we can tell. Like, I know each year I feel like I get, it's a different focus, right? Like you're focusing on something else. Some people call it focusing on your 12 aspects. We all have 12. You have 12 dimensions you can anchor in the body. Your consciousness can reach an infinite number, but there are 12 that you anchor in. And you have 12 aspects of things you're going to do. Like when I stream, that's one aspect of me. When I do videos, it's a different aspect of me. When I'm working on designing my website, that's a different aspect of me. When I'm doing the financial stuff related to, you know, the work I do, that's a different one. When I'm doing a session, that's a different one. And when I'm writing, that's a different one, though I don't write like I used to. I'll probably get a little more on that. I did sign up for the Threads portion of Instagram because that kind of felt like I was something I might want to do a little bit because I don't do Twitter. So I might put some posts on there. So I might get dip into a little bit of writing on there. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how that goes. But you will have 12 dimensional things you're going to do. 12 different things of different parts of yourself. You know, when I'm cleaning the house, that's a different aspect of me in a sense. When I'm doing physical labor, that's a different aspect. So you're always going to see kind of different facets of yourself, but a lot of people kind of don't break them out that way, but you're going to start to kind of break things out. And each year you're going to kind of focus on you're going to bring in a new one, or you're going to refocus on another one again. And sometimes you'll see a little bit where you focus on one all along, but you didn't really like ingrain in it. And right when you get really good at it, you kind of feel like your focus goes off of it. When I do courses, that's a different aspect of me. When I'm teaching a class, that's a different aspect of me, which I focused on kind of last year. This year, it's been more on learning to coexist with people in a home again, because I've lived by myself for like 10, 15, 20 years. Most of my adult life, I've lived by myself. So learning to do that, because that is one thing about unity consciousness. It doesn't mean everyone you go come and stay with or live with for a while, you're going to live with forever. It's just you're learning to live with people of a different consciousness. And it's a big part of the journey when we start to do that, because we have to see if we can hold our highest when everything else around us is sort of, you know, kind of a mess in a sense. And not a mess in a judgment, but just in a more third dimensional consciousness, maybe kind of starting a little bit of their awakening process, but not quite there yet. Sometimes we're put in these situations because we're the ones that our vibration kind of starts to push people to the next phase for them. I know I've noticed in the people that are in this house with me that they're starting to kind of show a lot of signs of awakening ascension, and I feel like some of the timelines are speeding up, and some of that I know I'm speeding them up just because of our presence in different places will speed up the timelines a bit. Like what I might have had to be here for a longer amount of time, but now I'll probably finish it in like 9 months, 10 months. And you can see how, we're jumping, I'm putting 2 years into 9 months. So things that would have lasted for 2 years are now going out in a couple of months. I think I told the story about the car battery. You just replace the car battery and then all of a sudden it's dead. And it's like, that should last for 2 years, but we're jumping that much. But you can't do quantum jumps like that when you're in your human consciousness. You can only do quantum multidimensional jumps when you're activating your higher consciousness knowledge. Your human can't do that. It doesn't have the capability to do that. So when I talk about a lot of that stuff, if you're really in your head about it, you're trying to kind of come at it in a different way. You're trying to come at it from that linear consciousness. The same thing for the 777. Everybody wants like a day to gravitate to. Like, this is the most important day. This is the most important thing you're ever going to hear. I can tell you it's not. It might be kind of important in the moment, but it's not the most important thing you're ever going to hear. It's just another energetic portal that's opening, and it's something that's it's gonna be a strong energetic show and tell in a sense. You're gonna see a lot when that portal comes in. For me, the solstice and this just kind of show me things I can't take with me in the next phases I'm going to do, and I'm going to focus on something else. This year's been more about living with people, coexisting with people, being able to hold my highest and do that. Because we spend a lot of time on our own because we need to be able to live on our own, because we're not at this place yet to be able to hold our vibration around other people that all would be considered on the unconscious side. We're not able to do that. But I have different roles to fill here, so it's the reason I'm here, and I'm supposed to be here during this exact time for where they are in their process. And it's all kind of, you can kind of see how the cadence, like I said, there's a cadence to it. You understand why you have to be here. You understand the purpose of your year. Normally, I start seeing my next year around October, November. And sometimes I'll start it then, but I won't really get in the swing of it until January, February. And I still might be finishing up some old stuff from the year before in January and February. And then you feel like you really don't hit your stride until like maybe April of that year. And then you go from there, and then you start feeling the new stuff. It's always new stuff coming in. You're always going to be getting kind of your next thing, and it might not be revealed to you yet. What might just be revealed is what you can't take with you. So I mentioned that in the summer solstice. I think it came very clear again for me because I had some stuff I revisited. I had a couple people pop back in that I could kind of check in to see where they were in their journey, and then I was able to sort of look at kind of where I am and what's going to come next. So don't be surprised if you really get good at one thing that all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore, now I'm going to focus on doing this, and it's like, oh, okay, and this kind of takes a side burner, and then eventually you kind of learn to work through all of them at the same time and be able to do everything at once. It was also, this was a big physical year for me as far as some physical upgrades I had to do. They were hard for you to do some of those when you're by yourself because you're managing the whole home, and you can't be down for like a week at a time because you're throwing up, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. You have to trash to take out, you have things you have to do, that kind of, animals to feed, things you have to do to keep everything running. But when you're kind of sharing the space with someone else, you have other people to kind of fill that stuff in. So there's also, you might find that people will come in that sense when it's time for you to go through some of that stuff. Some of the physical upgrades that are just, could you do them without anyone there? Yeah, but it's a little bit easier sometimes when you do have someone else, because for a bunch of us, we're going to find that our world is very vacant for a long period of time, and it's because we're kind of vibrating really in a frequency where no one exists but us in our universe, and trying to figure out, what's the next thing I'm going to do. And we spend a lot of time there, and even in my life now, there's not a lot of, very, 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 very few people. And it's been like that for a long time. It's been like that for years now. And that's sort of what will happen. I hear that very similar story from a lot of people that, everyone kind of fades away, and then you're kind of, our human expects everyone to pop right in right away. And it's not that things don't pop in, because they will pop in. They're just not kind of what you thought was going to pop in. They're not the way you wanted them to look. They're not what you wanted them to be like. We kind of have this human vision of what ascension is. And when you're ascending your consciousness, taking your body to higher consciousness, anchoring in soul line realities, it's not gonna look like human realities. And we keep trying to go back and retrofit those two together to link them together in some way. Not that there isn't a link. Everything you do as a human, in your human aspect, living out your human template, every skill you learn, you're going to utilize later on. You know, you're going to come back and be like, oh, I'm really glad I know how to do that now. You know, I'm really glad I learned that skill because now I'm going to do that in my higher consciousness realities. You know, this is something I'm going to do. This is not something I could kind of, you know, do and forget about. This is an important thing for me to do. And they're going to find that all along the way. So none of it is for nothing, you know. It just sometimes we can feel like I don't understand why this doesn't look like I thought it would look. I thought everything would be, you know, moonlight and roses, and this is kind of tough. And this is one of the hardest journeys this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do. You know, I'll hear that a lot, you know. I know for me it was. I know I went through a phase, I'm going to say a phase, but part of it where you're like, what the hell? What am I doing wrong? You know, why is, you know, every time I would check in with different groups I was part of, and everyone seems like everything's, you know, beautiful and amazing in their little ascended life. And I'm like, really? Because this kind of mine is not going like that over here. You know, and then there is that part of me that's like, what am I doing wrong? You know, how come mine doesn't look like that? It takes a while to realize everyone's kind of in a different part of the journey. And how good we were, and I'm going to use the word good here, not to judge, but just as just to kind of make a point, if we listened to kind of all the heads up we had along the way, but different things we had to be able to do. And I know there are a couple things I did not listen to. You know, I kept knowing I had to, you know, maybe stockpile a certain amount of money to get me through a certain part of time. And did I have some? Yeah. Did I stockpile as much as I could have? No. Did I waste a lot of money along the way? Oh, yes. So when I got to the part where I was going to have to live on a lot less money than I was used to living on, that was a massive rearrangement. And a lot of times we'll find like we live on very little for a long period of time. One, because we don't appreciate anything we have. You know, our human does not appreciate anything. So we have to learn to appreciate everything. And we have to appreciate that at a whole new depth of like everything we have, to realize that just having a place to live, food, those are really everything we need. You know, we don't have to have internet, we don't have to have phones, we don't have to have any of that stuff. As long as we have those things, we're good. Now, that doesn't mean we don't get the other things. But we have to rebalance every human deed we ever did that was from a distorted place, which is every human deed we ever did. That's everything we ever did. We got to rebalance that scale. And I always kind of see it as more of like an abacus. You know, it's like everything you ever did from that human aspect, every karma we created, not just from this dimension and our existence here, and every one we've ever, you know, because we're kind of merging them all into one, every existence we have. And we've got to go back and rebalance all that with doing everything from higher consciousness. You know, it's not just let me do one act from higher consciousness and let me see all that balance out right away. I mean, God, I've probably done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. I've done over 100 streams. I mean, and that's nothing compared to what other people, some people have done. You know, that's just a pittance of what other creators in this space have done. And you do all this stuff, and you keep thinking, is this going to be enough? You know, is this going to start to really shift it? Or do I still have more to do? And then after a while, you just start doing it because you have to kind of start to separate out those mindsets in a sense. Separate out to really separate out what's going on. You know, why is it bothering me? What do I want it to look like? If I want it to look like a human existence, why didn't I just stay in my human existence? That wasn't all gravy either. It just felt like it made more sense. What we kind of envisioned it to be can take a while for us to get to that, and our vision of what it's going to be is going to change along the way. You know, now, as long as I have a couple hours, I can get outside, I can sit in the sun, I can watch, you know, some rabbits go by or whatever, some deer, perfectly happy. I don't need anything else. You know, that's just a beautiful day. Or I can sit and maybe I'll watch a movie with my cat. And I'm like, what a peaceful, beautiful day. respond to some comments I have, or do some videos or whatever it is I'm doing. All of that is what really starts to keep you going and keep you fueled in what you're doing. And you continue to go to a higher consciousness. You continue to go into a different reality. And sometimes it takes a while for our external stuff to start to align. It's not like it's right away. And we kind of expect to make all these internal shifts and then right away the external shift. And it doesn't work that way. And because it doesn't work that way, we start thinking, well, hell, what am I doing wrong? I can remember uttering those words. Holy shit, I've done this wrong. Which we can't do it wrong. There's no possible way to do it wrong. We just resist the process of how it's going. And we get into that mindset that it's our human mindset of, oh, I did it wrong. Because it's not turning out the way I thought it was going to look. I thought it was going to look one way, and it doesn't look that way. And I don't know why it doesn't look that way. It should look a certain way, and it doesn't look that way. So what else do I have to do? What else do I need to do? Until we appreciate what we have, we're not going to get any more. There are certain cosmic laws when you start working in ascension, and you start working with cosmic law, and you start understanding, is it the law of attraction? In a sense it is. Is it as simple as those books make it out to be? No, it is not. Because there's so many other things what aspect are we attracting from? A lot of people have read the law of attraction, but how many people are living an ascended life, that have taken all those things and created a soul life? A lot of people try to take those tools and recreate a human life. They just I want a different version of it. I want a version of my human life where I'm rich. Or I want a version of my human life where I'm in perfect health. I want a version of my human life where I'm successful, where I'm famous. But it's still human wants there. There's still a distortion of why we want it. None of those things are for a higher good. They're all for our own good, which the minute we're doing anything for our own good, we know we're in our human aspect. That doesn't mean that we don't take care of ourselves and make sure that we are getting what we need to be able to continue to our ascension process. That is our number one thing. Your body will shut itself down where you won't be able to do anything unless you're taking care of your body and taking care of yourself. But it's kind of two sides of the same coin. It's almost like a parallel to each other, whereas we can still be trying to attract, fame and fortune from our human aspect, but we're still not taking care of our body. We feel like that's taking care of ourselves because it's an external way to take care of ourselves. It's not the internal way of taking care of ourselves, like giving time for ourselves. It's a whole different thing. And while we're in those phases, and when we're in those moments for ourselves, when we really have to look at, why isn't this working the way I wanted it to? What did I expect? What are my expectations of what this was going to be? Because when you start to really dive into and everyone's process is going, they're similar, yeah, they're all very energetically similar. They're all, everyone goes through certain phases, we're going through a lot of phases and congruently, we're going through them at the same time. It's not like we're in one phase, now I'm going to stop that phase and I'm going to another phase. I'm doing one phase where people also kind of lay it out as the DNA, where you have one strand of DNA and you're in a being phase and kind of getting a download of what you're going to do while you're doing what you got the download for the year before. And think of a million different downloads, not just one, but for this conversation we're going to simplify it. So I'm in the doing phase of doing this, I'm anchoring this in, but I'm in the being phase of just kind of getting the download of what I'm going to do. And that's what really kind of the 777 can be. Or even that'll pretty much take us into the Lion's Gate when we get into the Lion's Gate in August, where we really have to be aware of what's going on around us. Heighten the awareness as to what is it showing me, what's ticking me off. A lot of people think that, well, what am I supposed to see? It's almost like those cartoons when you see someone go by with a banner and this is important. Sometimes it's not that obvious. Sometimes it's just this person's pissing me off. And why am I pissed off at what this person is doing? Sometimes I would get pissed off at someone doing something that really had nothing to do with me. It was just my issue with the person, and they're doing something with someone else, and that's pissing me off. But that's not about that person, that's about me. Why do I care that person's not talking to me? Why do I care what that person is doing? Do I feel like what they're doing is disrespectful? Yeah, but they're not doing it to me, so why does it bother me? these are things we start to see that, oh, I got to clear that. That's a program I have. That's an issue I have with that person. That's some emotion I have with them. I haven't resolved that emotion. I have to let that stuff go. And by let that stuff go, that's a human term, I have to resolve it. I have to resolve that. I have to admit I feel that way and go, okay, let me just scream and yell about this by myself in a mirror. I go outside and bitch about it to myself and get it out of my system. And then see the next time it comes back around. Because you'll see it come back around again, and you're going to look at it again and say, oh, okay, wait a minute. Does that still bother me as much? I'm now deeper in this program I have. Am I still pissed at this person because they just did the same damn thing? But now it's even a little more disrespectful, but it's really not toward me. So why do I care about it? And knowing that this person has to go through their ascension process. And these are certain, in a way, karmic things they're going to have to go back and redo. Because everyone is going to go through ascension. People think because certain people haven't gone through it yet, that they're not going through it. You're going to go through it one way or the other. You're going to either pick to go through it in this physical body, or you're going to transition and come back in a different physical body and do it then. You can even see a lot of the kids that come in now. The children that are coming in now, they're not like the kids that came in before. They're not like we were, in a sense. They're more connected already. They're more sensitive to what's going on. They're going to have a different experience, and they're going to have a different experience because of the vibration of everyone that's now on the earth and the vibration of what's going to be happening. I'll hear people talking about so many people, are ascending, and sometimes we have to really look for that and go, really, I don't know if I meet that many people that are. But everyone's in that different beginning process. Some people just might be getting into concepts like, oh, telepathy, that's kind of fun. What's that mean? I wanted to Google that. Or I had a dream and it stuck with me. I wanted to see what that is, because the dream world is where we really start to open up. And we start to see all this stuff happening, but because it's not happening fast, because a human wants everything right now. It's like, I want this right now. It doesn't remember that some things we didn't get them right away. But we want everything right this moment. If it doesn't happen right this moment, we kind of want to move on to something else and say, well, that didn't work. That doesn't work. Why isn't this working? In the beginning, opening up's kind of easier in a sense, because any little opening you get, consciousness is going to get in there and show you, look, this is kind of real. This isn't bullshit. This is kind of really real. Telepathy, human word, but it's still a concept, ESP, reading your field is more how I like to say it. I do use the word telepathy because it does connect with people in their human aspect, because it's a curiosity there. We're always getting downloads of things. We're getting downloads of what people say in front of us. We're looking at someone and feeling it doesn't feel right. That means you're reading what they're giving off energetically is not what they're saying. So right away, the shit does not feel right. Because but you can't put your finger on it. You're like, it just feels off. It feels off because you're reading something, your field's reading something different than what you're hearing. And that's always a big kind of a red flag. But sometimes it's the subtle things. It's just the things that start to bother us. It's the things that I'm like, why does that bother me? And I'm in a big clearing ancestral karma phase this year, and that means clearing stuff with blood family and clearing and then all the other ancestral karma that goes with that. And there's just certain people that I'm like, that person really just agitates me, but I know that's me to work through. And until I work through it, I'm going to be stuck in this working through ancestral karma until I even say to myself, yeah, that bothers me, and it's okay for me to say that bothers me. I don't say it to that person because they're not doing anything specifically to me. It's just in general how they're treating others, and that bothers me. But the others are letting themselves get treated that way. It's a whole thing we start to see when we start to see the cycles, of different things we might see our parents do, and we're like, oh, I can see where I did that a little bit, or I saw my grandparents do that, and oh shit, I'm doing that kind of same thing. These are the things we start to work through, and these are not sexy human things we're going to work through. So if you might spend a year working through, or 2 or 3 years, it depends on how all in we go. Usually it's 2-year minimum for me for most of my realities to come to a certain completion point. As far as when I'm living somewhere, everything is usually 2 years, because it takes so long for us to build our new template for the next place we're going to go. It takes that long to start clearing if we give it everything we got. I can see other times where it took me 7 or 10 years to work through something because I didn't give it everything I had. I didn't really realize what I was doing. I was clearing the human way, which means I was going through all these physical realities and suffering through that experience, right? Ascension, we can suffer through ascension. I mean, we're going to go through it one way or the other. If we want to spend our time suffering through it and getting pissed because it's not how I thought it was going to be, and part of that's victim energy that has to clear, we're going to go through that, or we have to clear that. But if anyone thought, gee, clearing ancestral karma, that just feels so sexy, I can't wait to do that part of the journey. But when we're in it, I'm like, yeah, but it's important, because this is nothing my human would have done. And that's why we feel like we get kind of slammed with so much of it. What would my human have done? Avoided it. Everybody would have died. I would have just moved on from that, carried it with me. And then, ingrained in your DNA, we're going to go through it again in the next, in the next iteration of a different lifetime. And you can kind of see, what would I have done? Ignored the shit. Ignored it, pretend like it didn't bother me, not really pay much attention. The older generation dies, and we just move on. But that's not what ascension is. Ascension is not let me bury my head in the sand. Ascension is we work through our shit. And that's all of it. It's the stuff we don't want to work through. That's why it's not easy. It's understanding that we don't really appreciate anything. We don't really care about people, even though we kind of think we do. We really don't. It's getting into our stuff. That's what it is. It's clearing out the human programming so our other DNA can start to rewrite. Our higher conscious DNA can come online. It's not setting and waiting for our human realities to just be done and now I'm going to get this awesome reality. We're ingrained in human realities for a reason. There's a whole human collectives have set up all these human-based systems because that's how they're set up. It's kind of ingrained in our DNA. Going through ascension is a physical process. Our body has to clear all this stuff. That's why it can take years. But look how long it took you to set up a human life. People want to say, oh, this might take 4 or 5 years, 7 or 8 years. If I give it everything I got to get to a certain place where I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to relax a little bit. And now I feel like I've gotten through a lot of my deep stuff. These little things don't bother me anymore. I would always say my worst day in ascension is still better than my best day as a human, in my human aspect, by far. By far, because our human aspect has no idea what it's doing. It's riddled with fear. It lives in fear. It kind of waits around for stuff to happen. And we can kind of find ourselves doing that for a while when we start getting into our ascension. Feeling like, oh, and no one's supporting me. Well, then I'm really not supporting other people either. I have to support other people. And that might not mean financial support. Sometimes it might, if you have the means to do that. When I have the means to do that, that's what I'll do. It might just be energetic support for certain things. Because if we don't support, we don't show support, we don't get support. It is reciprocal as the cosmic law goes. If you're not going to hire an expert to do something, no one's going to hire you as an expert to do something. What are we not doing? Sometimes it's easier for us to say, okay, what am I not doing that I could be doing? And it can be the simplest things. It could be just going someplace and being kind to people, helping people put groceries in their car. I used to put carts up. That was one thing I would do all the time. If I would see carts in a parking lot, I would just put them up. So much so, a couple people thought I actually worked at the store, and they'd ask me questions about the store. Just because it was something to do, it was something kind to do, and, someone else didn't have to do it, and I'm out there. Why don't I just take these carts back? I did that lots of days, and it was just something I could do that day. And it was something that I kind of got into enjoy after a while to do. But we kind of start to look for, I want to be able to do that big thing, not understanding we have to lay the groundwork, but doing the little things from our purest place before we can do the big things from our purest place. It's not doing the thing. Our universe isn't saying, oh, you can't do the thing because we don't want you to do the thing. We have to do the thing from our highest aspect. And if we can't do that, you're not going to get the thing to do. Because you're just going to be doing it from a human aspect, and that's not what ascension is. Ascension is not doing everything from a human aspect and trying to sugarcoat it because I'm going to say the word positive vibe, or I'm going to say embodiment, and I'm going to say some buzzwords, and all of a sudden I'm ascended, or all of a sudden I'm going to be living that because I said those words. But when someone talks, you can feel 100% they're still 100% in their human aspect, and they don't even know what they're talking about when it comes to ascension because they're not doing it. The only time you can talk about ascension is when you're in certain parts of ascension to talk about them. When you're in awakening, you're going to be talking about awakening because that's where you are, and that's what you're going to assist other people with, because the people who are going to be attracted to that is the people to that frequency is the people in that space. They want to hear that. Whereas I'm not going to turn on someone talking about an awakening process because that was me 10 years ago. Now I'm going to turn on something that's talking about being an 11th, anchoring in 12th dimensional consciousness or above or oversoul consciousness because that's where I'm going. So we kind of feel like because we don't have this big thing, we just want this big reality. We're wanting these big realities, and I just wanted, and not realizing at the time, if I go back and look, I couldn't have handled those realities. I wasn't capable of that. I couldn't handle those from a higher aspect. I would still be doing it from a human aspect, which means we're still creating more karma to clear. Are we still clearing something? Yes. But we're not getting to the place we have to get to. There's also a part of, we can't take humans' money we earned in our human aspect, we're living our human template, and translate it to a soul template because the money's tainted. So it can kind of bridge us to a certain extent, but when we get into living ascension, which basically means you're kind of living with nothing, and not nothing as a sense of not having anything, but living with, I don't know what happens next. I'm kind of taking that leap of faith, the Indiana Jones leap of faith, where it lights up underneath him as he goes. But I don't know what happens next. I don't have a safety net. When you don't have a safety net, you're in ascension. Because you don't have anything to grab onto. All that's gone. And, and you can kind of appreciate the safety nets a little bit more when you had them in a human aspect, but you were so afraid of leaving those human realities, you didn't even take those. So now you're like, shit, I don't even have those. And back then I scoffed at those because they weren't good enough for me. Now I'm like, I'd love a little skinny little mat to be on the ground if I'm going to fall. Now you look down, you feel like they're just razor blades down there because you don't have any of that stuff anymore. So there's so much that goes into this process that we do get a lot of doubts along the way, and we do think we're doing it wrong, or why isn't it working out that way? And when I just started looking at all the stuff I did have and what I wanted, and all this stuff, I'm like, oh, I wish I had this, and this. I'm like, well, wait a minute, I had that, and that over there, and I wasn't happy. So why do I think bringing that stuff in here is going to change anything? Anytime I'm in any kind of clearing and I'm uncomfortable or I'm upset about something or I don't like something, I know that's me. That's something I'm clearing. I'm clearing more programming. I'm clearing that frustration. Because if I say, oh, I just wish that would happen, there's a part of me that knows if that should happen, it's not going to change anything. That's a very external thing. And when I'm in the space of, if that happened, that would make me happy right now, I know it's like, one, it's not going to do that. And two, I'm just clearing out and pissed that thing hasn't happened yet. But until I get to a place where, yeah, if it happens, that's fine. If it's not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to create something else over here too, and maybe this will happen. Because we create and see a lot of different realities. It doesn't mean they're all going to anchor in. It doesn't mean they're all going to happen. Some you might get a glimpse of and go, yeah, that's not aligned. I got a re-glimpse of another one this week, and I'm like, I really wanted this one to align, but it's not going to. I can see that it's still not going to align, so there's no point in me really worrying about it in a sense of being disappointed about it. Because we really start to see that that's not going to be the thing. There was never one thing. It's our connection within ourselves. That's what's important. And when we're clearing a lot and pissed off about something, we're just deepening that connection. Because we're getting all that other stuff out of the way so we can deepen our connection. And then how do we feel about things once we're through that process? So I'm going to open up my chat for a minute. That was a much longer beginning than I thought I was going to have. This is my opening thoughts. My opening thoughts that ended at 33 minutes later. There's my opening thoughts. And there's also a part of, when we activate, when we start being into structuring our own realities, when we start doing that, we're activating our God particle. We're activating we are now the prime creative of our realities. That to me is what the God particle is. I'm the creator of this. There's no one to pray to. There's no one out there. It's just me. It's just me. Higher aspects of me, but it's still just me. Aspects of me, higher aspects of me I'm going to anchor in. Some I haven't anchored in yet, but it's still me. And then you'll also clear that Lucifer energy that's on the flip side of that. Which there's a lot of self-hate that goes with that. So we kind of activate one and we're going to activate the other for clearing so we can activate more of the other. So we can have a lot of self-hate come up But as our human aspect, we're riddled with self-hate. I see that over and over again with different things people say, how they minimize everything they've done. And we kind of did the same thing. I think it's important to think you're not alone when you're in those places, and you're not alone when, even though it feels like that, because there's not a lot of human presence around of someone else. As a human, we wanted people around. One, it distracted us from ourselves. Two, they did help us see things about ourselves. There's a reason every relationship we had, they did help us get to a higher frequency, even though it might just be a little tiny tick up, because we were going through a very rough physical experience to get there. It took a lot more time, linear time, to get to that place. We would do that a lot, and that's what they're there to show us. They're not there for anything else other than that. And we'll get to certain places where, okay, now it's time for me to be on my own for a while with kind of nobody around. One, like I said earlier, you're in a frequency where there's nobody with you. Nobody's vibrating in that frequency anymore, and you're by yourself. And I've spent years like that with like I said, so few people, and really no one in the reality. No one I'm really sharing the reality with, in a sense, because it's just not. That's not aligned. It hasn't been aligned for me. Do I feel like that will come in? I think in some part it might, but right now that's not. And it can feel, there's a difference between being alone, being lonely, and just fucking sometimes being bored. And there's a part of where more of my ascension, like, am I really lonely? No. Am I alone? Yes. But am I just kind of a little bored? Because there's some boring parts to ascension. There are a lot of boring parts to ascension where you're going to sit there and be like, maybe I'm just a little bored. It would be kind of nice to have someone else here to discuss these concepts with, or see what we're going to create, or what we can anchor in, and what more things we can do. And sometimes it's just a little bored. And you have to kind of find the pleasure in the simple things for a long time, years. Years and years and years and years of this. And if you've done it for 3 or 4 or 5 years, you start to understand that, and you don't require any of the other stuff anymore. If it's there, that's fine, and that's when you start to see it come back in, because everything that comes in is going to enhance. Everything comes in for a purpose. It's going to be for a higher consciousness purpose, and that includes people. If there's no higher consciousness purpose for that person being there, they're not going to be there. And if they are there, you're going to look at them and go, okay, is there a purpose for this? Or maybe I can do this reality in a couple weeks, and the purpose is fulfilled. But I don't need to drag this shit out for 2 years like I would have done 20 years ago because I wanted to drag it out. There's no point. If there's no purpose, there's no point. And you're going to find you're going to do that a lot. You're going to look at a lot. That's why we don't bring a lot of stuff in. And why you are by yourself a lot of the times when you're in certain parts of this, because there's not a purpose for that. Why would I bring that in? That's just hell. Bringing a very unconscious person into your life when you are in a different place in your process, and they might be in a pre-ascension, they might be in an awakening process, and you might touch base with them from time to time to assist with that if that's the role you're filling for them. But having them in your life every moment of the day, that's hell. That is going to be your version of hell. And that's what starts to happen when you start going and jumping through different realities and really raising your vibration. You start to go through that, and you're like, wow, now all these old realities, they kind of feel like hell, because in the way they are. Human consciousness and those realities are going to be deemed as hell for you, and you start to see that, and you're like, oh my God, these are miserable. I don't want to be around these people. I don't want to be here anymore. This is just, I can't do it. And that's when you start to see the shifts. We just kind of expect somebody to come in immediately. We have this thing because of some of the, I'm going to call it propaganda, but some of the works that have come out on that, like, as soon as this happens, something else is going to come in. And is that true? Yes. Does it come in the way you think it's going to come in? No. Will it be in that it's not going to be how you think? All of a sudden you might lose a job and you're like, oh, I'll get this other great job. Well, wait, I didn't. Now I have just minimal unemployment checks that are keeping me going. Well, but I'm still being kept going. I just don't like the way that looks. That's not how I wanted to be supported during this time. or, oh, wait, my parents are going to send me money. Well, that's not how I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it this way. I wanted to be making money from my website or making money from merchandise or whatever we kind of thought it was going to be. But in that moment, we're learning to, if we've always supported ourselves, you're going to do a third time where you're going to be supported. And you have to understand that other things you can do besides money things are important. And we kind of, in our human life, we think if we're not contributing money, we're not important. And a lot of times from even a human aspect, people will see that and be like, okay, well, if you're not contributing money, what are you doing? You're not important to this reality. And we have to work through all that. We have to work through how we feel about that and understand that what we do is important. And there will be times when we will be contributing money. But when we contribute money from those places, now what can I support? Now what am I supporting? Am I going to support New Earth? Am I going to support different creators that are creating ascension, doing ascension work? Or am I going to support a human thing? That's a lot of times in the beginning we don't get money because what am I going to support with it? I'm going to support the old shit because that's the one thing I know I can support, but now I can't support that anymore. So I'm not really going to have any extra money to support anything else until I understand what I'm supposed to do with it. And I can't then go and support old stuff. And sometimes something someone might ask you to support seems like, oh yeah, that would be, but that's still a very human consciousness thing. And I don't think I can support that. So it does start to really change how we think about things and change how we feel about things and change how we register things as to what would I support with this money? Would I support my blood family with this money, even though that's not really the higher purpose for this money? But that's what my human might have done. That's why I haven't gotten the money earlier or all this extra money earlier. Now, what would I support from a higher consciousness perspective? Knowing that if I give people money here, that might mess up their ascension process. I might, because they did something and not did something, but now they might want that money. But me gifting them that money might not serve the highest purpose. It might now interfere with their ascension processes they have to go through because they were ignoring the signs of something they had to do. And they didn't do it. And now they're kind of at ground zero with maybe their awakening process. And is this really going to support them in the best possible way? Helping someone avoid a train wreck might not be the highest consciousness thing to do. And those are the things you really start to have more clarity on. And that's another reason why we don't see mass influxes of money coming in the beginning of our ascension, even in the middle of our ascension. And like I said, ascension is always going on. It never ends. Because there's always something we're going to work through. It's just so much stuff there. With so much material. So much material. People talk about not having any content. I mean, oh my God. You never run out of content. You never run out of content of stuff you can say and stuff you can do. Content is never an issue I have. I don't even have enough computers to hold everything that I put out. There's not enough room. There's not enough room. So I think that's probably a good place to end it. I don't know if there's anything else. I think that's a good length today too. So, okay, I think that's it. So, anything else I want to throw in? Look at what's revealed between when the 7/7 portal opened and probably we're going to go into the Lion's Gate with that and look at how you start to feel things start to shift. And when you start to feel that shift, that you're picking up on that Lion's Gate portal starting to open. Even my guess is I'll probably start to feel it around the 21st, 22nd of the month. I'll start to feel the Lion's Gate open and see what comes in with that. There's a power energy in the Lion's Gate. There's a no-nonsense energy in the Lion's Gate. If you're in your galactic aspects, there's a big Syrian energy in the Lion's Gate. There's a no more of that type of energy in the Lion's Gate. You'll see that I'll work through the collectives quite a bit. It's been a big theme this year of no more in the collectives, of what it's still, is it the highest consciousness stuff? No, but they're more conscious choices, even if from unconscious programming. But you are seeing the collectives kind of look at a lot of stuff and go, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. No more of that. I'm taking a stand. You're seeing a lot of people take a stand. And sometimes they'll take a stand for an external thing before they'll take a stand in their own life. Because it's easier to take a stand against an external thought or concept than it is to take a stand in your own life, because you have all these attachments and cords to your own life. But if you don't learn to take a stand in a theological sense, you don't have a lot of attachment to, you don't have any prayer taking a stand against something you have a lot of emotional cords of attachment with, like your mother or your child or your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. I don't have a chance at that type if I can't do it here. So it's kind of a training ground too. We go through a lot of realities like that where we're tested to see, can you stand in your power here, or you can't. And if you can't here, well, you need to worry about it over here. If you can't stand up to your yoga instructor, forget about trying to stand up to your mom. So we will see ourselves getting a lot of the same themes coming in of standing up for ourselves. Whatever you're going to be primarily working with at that time, program you're going to be working through, you're going to see a lot of different iterations of that come through to get you to do it. If you don't speak up, you're going to be forced to speaking up. I remember I was working with a lady, and she said the people next door kept playing music super loud at like midnight, but she didn't want to say anything. But she'd had a couple iterations of that going in different avenues of her daily, where it was like all these things were happening, but she didn't want to talk. And like the minute you speak up and say it, and we can do that from our highest place, we can still do that from a kind place with bringing power out, but not having our human aspect come out in that sense. But there's an art to doing that, and there's a way we kind of learn to be higher aspects because we have forgotten how to do that. So okay, I think that now is going to be it. So okay, bye.